So, what have we got for you today? Well, the Mirror has splashed on a follow-up to its front page story yesterday, finally identifying the main suspect in the murder of BBC presenter Jill Dando 25 years ago. Now, we have a full exclusive video on our investigation on the Mirror YouTube channel. There's a link in the comments, so I recommend going to have a quick look at that for a few minutes if you want to get a full background. If you didn't see the coverage yesterday, you can always look up yesterday's stories. The paper was full of it, because now a witness has come forward to confirm that the man in the mirror is, they think, the same man they saw running away from the murder scene at the time and who police never found. Now, John, can you recap this a bit for us? Because it was 1999, these events. Who was Jill? Why the fact that she was murdered, and why was her killer never found?
Yeah, so it's 25 years ago this week. The anniversary is actually on Friday. When Jill Dando was killed, she was one of the most famous TV presenters in this country. She presented BBC News. She presented Crimewatch. She presented the holiday programmes. Remember that used to be on TV. And so she was this huge star. And then she was shot on her front doorstep in Fulham in West London in April 1999. And there was a big police investigation. At one point, they did prosecute a man called Barry George. He was jailed. He was given a life sentence. But then several years later, some of the evidence that had been used to do with gun residue was found not to be accurate. And so he was actually acquitted and released. And so Jill Dando's family's never properly got justice, or they've never got justice at all, because the killer hasn't been found and locked up. And this investigation by the Mirror has been going back through loads of the old evidence. And one of the things they've been looking at is CCTV footage from Putney Underground Station, which was taken quite soon after the shooting. And witnesses talked at the time about how there was a sweating man seen running away from the scene of the crime. And this CCTV footage from Putney Station showed a man who matched some of the description of the guy who'd been seen running away. And so what the Mirror's done is they've taken this, they've looked at it with facial recognition experts, and they have suggested that there are likenesses between the man in this CCTV from Putney Underground Station and a Serbian hitman who, I'm going to struggle to say this name, but I'll give it a go, Milorad Ulemek. I should have just said it confidently, and then you'd presume that was the right Serbian.
You'd have known you had it absolutely pat then.
You'd have just thought, wow, he's so fluent in everything. And so now the pressure is on the police to look at, did they look at this properly at the time? And are they going to look at this again now? And the investigation's never been properly closed, but I think there's some quotes in the paper today from the Metropolitan Police. I think they talk about it being inactive. So basically, they've not fully shut it down, but they're not doing anything. And the woman who's quoted in the paper today is one of the people who was the witnesses who said that she saw the sweating man running away from the scene. And there's some quotes from her in the paper, and she's just shocked at the likeness between this Serbian hitman and the man that she says she saw running away from the scene. I wish I'd written down the quotes, but she was just saying...
She sounds like she's had one look at the paper and then rung in. Ring-ins used to happen all the time, readers. They don't happen anymore. But she's immediately ringing, oh my God, that's him. She's just like, immediately gone, yes, that's the chap I saw. And she's saying, I'm very good with faces. I can remember faces from decades ago. That is the guy I saw. And obviously the Mirror yesterday was using photographs of Ulemek back in the day. Now, the fact that this is a Serbian hitman is kind of, makes a doorstep murder kind of makes it extra dramatic in a way. But one of the things that made Jill's murder stand out was that she wasn't just shot by a passerby or something. She seemed to have been executed with a bullet in the back of the head, pinned down to her doorstep as she was coming home. Now, what do you think, viewers? Do you think this matters? This is a murder from 25 years ago. although her family and so on obviously haven't had answers, the shock in the country has moved on. The police tried to investigate. They made a bit of a mess of it. Does it matter? Do we need to look into this again? I'll declare an interest because I interviewed Barry George's mum about 1 million years ago for the Sunday Mirror, which was the first interview she gave after he was arrested or after he was convicted. And he was an incredibly troubled man, not terribly competent, I suppose, socially competent, I suppose is the best way to describe it. And there was no way, really, we came out of that interview thinking there's no way he could possibly have done something so cold-blooded and clinical and that would have required some thought as well. It was beyond him. But nevertheless, the police sort of persisted with saying that it must be Barry George, and it went all the way through to trial, and then he was eventually convicted. Now, Steve McMurran says, has a motive been suggested? Is there any suggestion the Serbian government had a role? Yes, Steve. So, John, can you explain this to us? Why would a Serbian hitman, my God, come all the way to London to kill the presenter of a BBC holiday programme?
Yeah, so there was loads of talk about this at the time, and there was US and British forces had conducted a bombing on a building in Belgrade. I think it was on a TV station. And there were anonymous calls to the BBC at the time. I'm just checking my screen to make sure I get this right. There were calls at the time to BBC Television Centre with basically them saying, you killed 16 people, we've killed one, there's 15 to go, which sounds like this is at the time of the killing of Jill Dando, which sounds like someone suggesting we are taking responsibility for this, that this has been done as revenge for this bombing in Serbia. So there's been loads of talk about Serbia all along. So that's why it's not just random that they've used his facial recognition and it's come up with a Serbian hitman. It would fit with some of the things that people have been talking about for the last few years.
Yeah, so it was mentioned at the time, and it's partly to do with the style of the killing. It seemed like there was someone who's a professional behind it. Also, Jill had been doing some appeals for Kosovan refugees, and that was quite high profile. She was super high profile. She was, there isn't an equivalent really today, I think, but she was very, very well known. Fiona Bruce, right? It's like that happened to her. But the main thing, when I read this, I always thought the Serbian hitman thing, I'll be honest, was a bit of a reach because, well, yes, but why? What? Are they mad? Kind of thing. But that Milosevic had taken personally against her in some way. That was always the suggestion. But when I read this stuff in the Mirror yesterday, it revealed that Ulemek, who is serving a 40-year sentence in a Serbian jail at the moment for assassinations, one of which was a journalist who was pinned to the floor, their own front doorstep, outside the front door, and executed in the back of the head. I mean, the MO is absolutely astonishingly similar. And, all the times that journalists get attacked or resulting in physical violence, doorstep executions are very, very rare. For there to be two, you'd think that maybe it is the same person behind it. Now, this is the kind of case, I suppose, like you say, it's inactive at the moment. It only really gets restarted when resources get allocated to it, and that happens for political reasons, for publicity reasons, because suddenly someone's looking bad and they need to do it. Do you think that the PM or the Home Secretary has this on their desk and is thinking about doing just that? I mean, it's not like it's going to be hard to find this guy. He's in Clink, and you can find out if he's in the country at the time quite easily, you'd have thought.
Yeah, I think there will be pressure on the government. I mean, yesterday at Number 10 do these twice daily lobby briefings for political journalists. It was asked about that then, and the PM spokeswoman said that obviously Rishi Sunak would be very pleased if someone was brought to justice for this, and he feels for the family at this difficult time, especially as we're coming up to the 25th anniversary. But that's not a kind of proper... That's some warm words, but isn't a real proper commitment. I think that there will be pressure on the police to look at this. And this Mirror investigation's obviously come along. But remember, there was also, I don't know if you've seen it, there was a program on Netflix last year that was going back through all the evidence as well. They interviewed Barry George. That was like a really good series as well. That you think if the Met did manage to, I mean, the Met have got a lot of bad press at the moment for many different reasons and many mistakes they've made. Some of it fair, some of it slightly unfair. But Their like prime job is keeping us safe and solving crime. And if they were able to get a successful prosecution all these years later on a big case like this, then it would be a massive good thing for them as a body at this time when they're facing loads of criticism. So I think if there's any chance that any of these details, any of these new bits of evidence could lead to new lines of inquiry that could possibly lead to someone being prosecuted for the murder of Jill Dando 25 years later, then I think that would definitely be a good thing.
Yeah, I think there would be an appetite for a good win there if one could be found. But the Met did screw up in some way over this. They got completely derailed by looking at Barry George when they shouldn't have done. And do you get the impression? I mean, looking at the Mirror's coverage today and yesterday, which talks about the CCTV of this suspect, it matches this guy up. We found some facial recognition expert who's been able to say it. We found a witness who says yes, that's him. This is all stuff the police could and should be doing. Perhaps they did. Perhaps they could have put these pieces together a bit sooner. Do you get any sense, perhaps, that they may have known about Ulemek at some point and decided never to follow that line of inquiry? I mean, there was lots of politics going on at the time. Blair was still in power. There was a war in Kosovo. Maybe there was more than just incompetence that meant they didn't chase this up at the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's a possibility. I mean, realistically, I don't know the answer to that question. But I think that one thing we can say is that quite often with police investigations, they can get kind of down one rabbit hole. They can get sidetracked because they are so desperate to get a result. They're so desperate that someone is brought to justice. And I guess in this case, that many of them were convinced that Barry George was the killer. And so they were very much looking at any evidence that kind of pointed towards him, and anything that didn't quite fit with that theory. You can see why in the kind of prioritization with stuff, they may have thought, well, it doesn't quite fit with what we think happened. So they may have kind of left it on the side. But now is obviously pressure on them to properly look at this and think, are there any leads in there that we didn't look at properly at the time that could now lead to something?
Yeah, maybe that will get sorted out. We'll have to see, won't we, as things progress with that. I'm sure that's a story that isn't going to be going away. But media pressure on the police does often lead them to make bad decisions. Jill Dando, Maddie McCann, Joanna Yates. It's happened time and time and time again.